President Parsons, we're alive online.
Okay, we're online now. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a regular open meeting of the Third Mutual Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. Today is Tuesday, October 15th. We're here in the boardroom at 9:30 a.m. So we've called to order, and I'd like Director Karimi to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would ask everyone at this time if they would turn off their cell phones, please, so we aren't disturbed during the meeting. And acknowledgement of the media. Do we have any media here? Okay, by a distance. Approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to accept the agenda?
I make a motion to accept the agenda for today.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay,
Okay.
discussion.
Okay.
Bunny?
I move that we move 11A, membership in good standing, to postpone it to November meeting based on new information to be presented to us by our legal counsel in closed session.
Okay, do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so we'll take that in consideration. Also, to close session? Yeah. Also on item, let me find it here.
B, 10B,
11,
10B, Steve.
Oh, D, 10D. I want to pull that and move it to new business, as we have an updated sheet here for us to look at. And we'll take that
10D.
up at that point.
Yeah.
So that would be an item to pull. Any other comments, questions?
That'll be 12A.
12A?
That'll become 12A.
Oh, that'd become 12A, yes.
Okay.
Actually, it would be 11C.
Oh, unfinished business? Okay,
It's unfinished business,
okay. 11C.
yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions, corrections? Okay. We need a motion to approve the agenda with the modifications as mentioned.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, can you read back the motion, please?
So we have a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment of moving 11A to closed session and then moving 10D to unfinished business, which would make it 11C.
Okay,
Correct.
okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
We're voting electronic.
Oh, okay, we're going electronic. Okay. One's missing. Who's missing here?
Director Indall is not here.
Oh, okay, got that. He will be coming late. Okay, so it passes. All right, approval of the minutes. Unless anybody has an objection, we'll take them all together. That's 5A, B, C.
I'll make the motion to approve those.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, we'll vote on that. All in favor of accepting these minutes? Okay, good, it passes. Okay, report from the chair. Want to remind everybody that we have a vacancy to fill, a board seat. And the closure date on that is when again, Cheryl, for nominations?
Okay, the close of nominations is October 21st.
21st, okay. So anybody interested in running for the board position, be sure you pick up a copy of the application from out here in reception. They can work that with you and then get it in before the 21st. Okay, another item, I'd like to introduce our officers for this year in case you weren't here at the annual meeting. And I'd ask you to raise your hand as I call your name. Annie McCray, First Vice President. Kush Bada, Second Vice President. Lynn Jarrett, Secretary. And John Pearlstone as Treasurer. We also have two new members. Ralph will be late today. He's a new member put on the board by election, and also Craig Wayne here. So that should bring you up to date on who's who here on the board. Okay. I was asked to do a little review, if possible, about accomplishments from last year. I think it'd be more apropos if I refer people to the website, as there are several slides that we went over. I think there's about 43 slides, 50 slides, and you can track the accomplishments that happened over the last year. So take a look at that, and if you have any comments, suggestions, let us know on that. Okay, that's all I had on this. I'll open up to open forum. What speakers do we have?
Our first speaker is Corky Ely.
Okay. Corky? Looks like we have you positioned a little bit out of the way here.
I decided I better sit on my car. I couldn't get off of the chairs before. Good morning. My name's Corky Ely. I've been a resident here for 35 years. Wow. Can you believe that? And I've been up in the board meetings almost every week, one board meeting or another, usually GRF and Third, because I am in Third Mutual. What I'm here for is I handed out some papers to the people before, and one of them was this, a little PCM's history. And this is very interesting because in here, it had this suit that Third had filed against PCM. And I was wondering what the outcome was because I could never find any information in all these years on what happened because they asked for a court. It was against their fiduciary duties, breach of contract, intentional concealment of the business law, professional laws code, which was a civil or a federal code, and elder abuse and negligence. And I was wondering what happened because there was never anything that they had gone to court, and yet they had asked for it and filed for it, and nobody had any of the information. Does anybody know? Well, I'm sure you don't. But then I started going through the papers. I think that's something that everybody should look into because this is unusual, that there was no indication on what happened with it. I know a lot of people were interested in it, but nobody came up with any information. Then I went to BMS. They filed the Articles of Incorporation for this corporation. and restated articles of incorporation of GRF. And that was wrong, in my opinion, because BMS is they formed their own management company. Now, how can we form our own management company and give all the information
Okay, Corky, your time's
and
up.
I'm sorry.
But what we could do, Siobhan, could you have somebody
May I finish
contact
one
her on
statement?
this?
The articles of incorporation were never filed. And yet, they're going by them. And they didn't get the vote of the people. This is getting to be a pattern in here.
Okay,
where-
Corky, please hold your
Okay.
comments, and Siobhan will get together with you and go through this in detail with you.
Sorry it took me so long.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to remind speakers when they come up that you can address the Board of Directors regarding items not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors. Okay? Who do we have next?
Our next speaker is Gila Zalone.
I'm Gila Zalin. 2 weeks ago, my husband Jules Zalin urged this board to follow bylaw 8.4.2 that says if the number of nominees is equal to or less than the vacancies, those nominated shall be declared elected. Since we had uncontested elections 3 years running, we didn't need to spend a penny conducting any elections, but we did, and wasted $60,000 in the process. Jules submitted to an executive board session a 9-page, single-spaced brief that showed 5 separate reasons why we didn't need formal elections. Third's lawyers said that a California statute required formal elections, but Jules's brief shows that it clearly does not. In fact, the statute doesn't require an election at all. It simply protects the secrecy of the ballot. But in uncontested elections, the need for the secrecy disappears. Jules's brief is crystal clear, and like any good legal argument, it requires no knowledge of the law to be understood. It simply takes uncontested facts, explains legal principles, and shows how applying those principles logically leads to a single conclusion that formal elections are not required. That's how the law works. How judges make decisions, they take facts, study parties' arguments, apply relevant legal principles, which are often found in the winning party's brief. So in the typical example, following the Socratic model necessarily leads to the most logical answer, since the law follows logic. In this case, Third's board had to decide whether to follow our bylaw or spend money on an election whose outcome was never in doubt. In deciding that issue, the board was acting like a judge. Jules argued in favor of following our bylaw and submitted a well-reasoned, logical argument in his brief. What was the reasoning, the convincing logic for conducting a formal election? None. Being told the statute requires it is simply a conclusion. There was no logic there. If your lawyer had explained why any of Jules's arguments did not hold water, the board might have been justified in accepting that reasoning. But a basic principle of logic and of law is that failing to contest an opposing argument concedes it. Your lawyers conceded Jules's argument by remaining silent, and the board violated its fiduciary duty by rubber stamping that conclusion,
Okay,
and
your
that
time's
was
up,
just
Gila.
plain wrong.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Next, we have Jules Zalin.
Jules Allen, 3124A. This board, as Gila said, wasted 60 grand on unnecessary elections without for a moment analyzing the very arguments that were presented to this board in executive session. As long as Gottlieb's firm said we had to spend the money, we just went right along. So was I a lonely voice in the woods, the only lawyer who believed we didn't need to conduct elections? Actually, no. HOA lawyer Larry Sterling took the same position. That name should ring a bell. He's the author of the Davis-Sterling Act. His firm's website discusses this issue directly and says that a separate California statute should excuse formal, uncontested elections. The statute says that the law does not require the performance of idle, useless acts. No judge in their right mind would ever have ordered a formal election when that order would only seat the very people that our bylaws already seated. It would be a useless and stupid act and violate the principle that the law follows logic. My brief cited the same statute, but it's only one of 5 strong reasons for following the law. And it's not even my strongest argument. It's down at number 3. So who's right? On the one hand, you got the guy that wrote the law, who did what any competent lawyer does, which is explain his answers. You have my brief, which has 5 separate reasons why we didn't have to do that. On the other hand, you have someone who says you got to do it because I say so, and it's going to cost you 60 grand as well. So whose argument makes more sense? Which one carries more weight? Which one was more logical? Which one should the board have accepted? Think that one over. Okay, that money is blown, and the statute is now taking care of, the new act is taking care of it. But this expensive and embarrassing episode can be used as a learning experience, encouraging you to question the legal advice you get. Lawyers provide advice, but you make the decisions, and you can't excuse a bad decision by blaming it on a lawyer. If a lawyer can't provide a convincing argument for following their advice, you should just not accept it. In my opinion, this is just one of numerous instances where we got not real advice, not logical, rational explanations, but merely instructions on how to proceed. And in my opinion, that's not what we should be paying for. Important decisions should be made by this board, not subcontracted out to people, including lawyers, whose competence I seriously question. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next up, we have Bill Walsh.
Got the right manner number? Well, I've only lived here 12 years, and it feels like an eternity some days. I just came by today to encourage all of you to attend the 1 o'clock meeting on Friday afternoon of the Village Energy Task Force. The Energy Coalition has produced a report. I hope you've all read it. Here's a copy of it. If you need a copy, you can get it from Ernesto. Okay. I read this report and made comments and asked questions to the chair of the Village Energy Task Force so he could deliver those to Ernesto, who could deliver it to the Energy Coalition people so they can answer these questions. So I want you to know that. As I did that in the capacity as the advisor to the third Mutual Village Energy Task Force, okay? There was a lot of emphasis on what are we going to do with the electrical infrastructure, particularly in 3-story buildings and carports in this community, because more and more people are adopting electric or PEV vehicles. So these electric vehicles are starting to put a real stress on these electrical infrastructure in these buildings and these carports. Anecdotally, I will tell you that I have 2 automobiles, okay? And one of them is all electric, and the other one is a fuel-efficient Honda. I do most of my errands, 90% of my errands probably, that's just a guesstimate, in the electric vehicle. because to go 20 miles in my electric vehicle, it cost me 85 cents worth of electricity. I don't know when the last time most of you gassed up, but when I go to Costco, it's hardly up to $4.
Yeah, over.
And I get 20 miles to a gallon when I'm driving on the local roads. This costs me 4 times as much to do the same thing that I can do in my electric vehicle. So the energy costs are a real driver for people to start adopting electric vehicles, and it's going to come, particularly when you get new residents in here. So there's a lot of information in this report. There are some estimates about what it's going to cost to upgrade this. I think everyone on this board needs to be there or needs to at least get a copy of the report and read it so you understand what's coming your way, okay? The last thing is the Energy Coalition is going to be talking about task 2 of this, which is to develop strategies. And so you're going to need to be aware, you're going to need to decide whether you want them to come forward in task 2 to develop strategies for how you're going to deal with these electrical infrastructures. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay,
Next, we have Bert Moldow.
okay.
Good morning, Bert Moldow,
Morning.
3503A, Bahia Blanca West. I am here today because I think the residents of Third Mutual deserve an explanation as to why you rejected the offer of a free street lighting pilot and buried your decision in the consent calendar to avoid discussion. With $750,000 possibly at stake, we really deserve to know. When I first presented the offer of the free pilot, incidentally by a contractor who had done major work for us in the past, the board rejected it for some unknown reason. When I approached the board last month as a former third board member and former MC chair and a current member of the Energy Task Force, a task force which, by the way, has extensively researched alternatives and asked you to reconsider the free offer with information you may not have been aware of, you enthusiastically agreed to reevaluate it. This free pilot, as you may recall, would have placed no additional demands on staff's resources and would have been done in a shorter period of time than the newly proposed $20,000 pilot you've contracted for with your consultant. I later learned through informal sources that the free pilot, which I had indicated, had the potential of saving over $700,000, was rejected again, a decision you reached without any input from any knowledgeable member of the Village Energy Task Force. I understand you are giving the consultant the go-ahead to redo the failed pilot using the same fixtures but different streets. And I have no objections to this, but why turn down another pilot, particularly one which will cost you nothing? I find this incomprehensible. I understood you were concerned that the consulting contract may have prohibited the free pilot, but those of us with contractual experience found nothing in the contract that prohibited separate piloting. If this is your lawyer's sticking point, remember, lawyers disagree. You just heard something about that now. And this amount of money will surely deserve a second opinion. I am here before you once again, despite feeling that this is a lost cause, despite comments from fellow members of the Energy Task Force not to waste my time, because I believe the community deserves a public explanation for why you may be throwing away people's asset dollars and valuable information. By rejecting this offer, you will never know if there was an alternative, no-risk, no-cost pilot that could have saved your community almost $750,000. It boggles my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Any other comments?
That concludes our open forum.
Oh, okay. Would any board member like to respond to anyone here? Okay. Corky, I think we already talked about Siobhan getting together with you on your topic, so we'll go with that. As far as Jules and Gila, I know that you've been fighting this for a long time, and as you well know, last Friday night the governor signed into law Senate Bill 754 under Chapter 858, which does now allow us to appoint people to vacancies if it's 1-for-1. And I think that the discussion on this has been going on for well over a year. I think this takes care of it, and I don't think we need to proceed with it any farther. Your comment about the board being responsible is absolutely true. We need to take that in consideration with every decision that we make. And like you said, legal advice is advice, and we need to take it as such. On Bill Walsh, I heartily concur with this on attending a meeting on Friday with, was it TRC, I think it is, the presentation. We've asked all of our board members to attend who can, because this has far-reaching effects upon us. Okay, so we know that there's things happening. For instance, in 2022, many car manufacturers will severely limit the number of gas vehicles that they're going to make. Most of them are going to be going almost to full production of electric vehicles. That is something we can't put our head in the sand about. The board this year has actually started in January, will start saving money toward energy projects such as rewiring of buildings to accommodate these, as well as the upgrade of certain transformers. Now, we understand SEC is going to provide those if we can justify them. We may have to do a test before that. We are looking into that for that matter. The Village Energy Task Force, when I was first vice president, I sent a list of 4 things that I wanted them to look at because I know it's going to hit us. I hope that those items have been taken up by the task force. So any other comments by anybody on this before I go to the last speaker? Okay. All righty. In Bert's comments, he spoke about something that was on the agenda. However, I let him talk because I want to make a statement here. And it's something that we're going to conclude today. And I'll just read it to you. Comments on the streetlight project. The Third Mutual Board has been wanting to improve street lighting throughout the Mutual for a long time. There are dark places in our areas where residents cannot walk on a sidewalk and tell whether they are stepping on a root, a vine, or a snake. In other areas, we have lighting difficulties when driving and experiencing difficulty in seeing in some of our cul-de-sacs and intersections. To alleviate this problem, in August 2017, staff advertised a request for proposal, or RFP, for consulting services. After advertising the RFP, staff received 2 proposals from Siemens and Tanco Lighting. The RFP also included requirements for assistance from a consulting service to assist us in acquiring 768 street light poles from SCE, retrofitting 788 street light fixtures from high-pressure sodium lights, that's HPS, to light-emitting diodes LED lights, and providing annual maintenance of the street lights. On 25 September of 2017, staff interviewed Siemens and Tanco Lighting, allowing them an opportunity to present their proposals and respond to a list of questions prepared by staff. During a special closed session of the board on 6 March 2018, the board selected Siemens Industry, Inc. as our lighting consultant. The contract provided for a 3-year maintenance service plan, renewable annually. In October of 2018, Siemens provided a fixture analysis of several light fixtures, which included a total of 5 options. As part of their recommendations, Siemens strongly advised us against simply replacing the bulbs in the mushroom-style light fixtures for the following reasons. Number 1, LED lamp replacements retain heat, causing the bulbs to fail prematurely. Number 2, LED lamp replacements do not address the aging fixtures, which are showing signs of various stages of disrepair, leaving them to continue to break down, requiring full replacement in future years. Number 3, LED lamp replacements do not support new technology. And number 4, LED bulb-only replacements have poor optical control and limited coverage of the light output. At the 7 January 2019 third M&C committee meeting, discussion ensued regarding photometric studies, cost of trimming trees for the pilot, pole spacing, and the amount of kelvins, which is the color of the lights and the intensity, and the possibility of running multiple pilots at one time. A motion was made and unanimously approved to authorize staff to deploy a pilot project known as Pilot 1 for the retrofit of street light fixtures along Avenida Sevilla, utilizing Siemens recommended fixtures. Staff was also directed to obtain pricing from Siemens to conduct an additional pilot known as Pilot 2 to include other locations, varying pole heights, different kelvins, and different street light configurations, including intersections and cul-de-sacs. After Pilot 1 was conducted, a special board meeting was held on 8 April 2019 to discuss the pilot results and to receive feedback from the members. Member and board comments were received and expressed the need for an additional pilot to be installed at other streets, at intersections and in cul-de-sacs with light fixtures that offered more directional light dispersion, reduce glare, and include different pole heights. By consensus, the staff was directed to provide Siemens with updated criteria and a scope of work for an additional pilot to address all the voiced concerns. Siemens was also directed to recommend additional fixtures which could be included in the new pilot to provide the best possible lighting we could afford. Staff carefully developed a scope of work for Pilot 2 and requested Siemens to provide a cost of a proposal to execute the new pilot, which took into consideration board direction and addressed all voiced concerns. Siemens provided a proposal to meet the scope of work and also include a section of 4 additional highly efficient fixtures meeting the highest light performance with the best light dispersion characteristics and fixture options. At the 18 July 2019 special open workshop, the board reviewed a second presentation from Siemens regarding alternate fixtures available for the second streetlight project, or Pilot 2, for the conversion pilot project. Siemens presented different fixtures and their individual pricing. After a discussion, it was decided that fixtures used in Pilot 2 would include the King K427 fixture. Pilot 2 is scheduled to commence in early November of this year. Locations to view proposed lighting locations will be made available prior to the beginning of the test, and then so our residents and board members can see them. As you can see, the prior boards and staff spent considerable time reviewing information data for these tests. During this time, an additional bulb was presented, but was not selected to be included in the pilots, particularly due to the reasons presented earlier in this statement, items 1 through 4. Your present board reviewed information from the prior boards last week, interviewed staff, and deliberated for about an hour. It was decided to continue Pilot 2 with Siemens as was approved by the prior board and not to include another bulb as part of this project. At the end of Pilot 2, the board will make a selection of lights and fixtures to be installed as soon as possible, hopefully to help us out with the dark times of the year. We, the board members seated before you, have fulfilled our due diligence and fiduciary responsibility requirements. As of this date, we will proceed as planned and not entertain any further recommendations on Phase 1 only of this project. We will consider Phase 2 in the future to enhance and hopefully complete the streetlight project for Third Mutual. That concludes my comments. Any other comments by anyone? Okay.
Steve, Gibson.
Okay.
Your comment about at cost should be mentioned. At cost
Can you explain that?
for the fixture. In other words,
Oh, yes, at cost.
Siemens is going to install them at cost.
At cost, correct. That was given to us also. Okay, that concludes the response to the open forum speakers. We'll have the CEO, COO report, please.
Honorable President, members of the board, it's my honor this morning to present the CEO update. I was going to lead with Senate Bill 754, but the president stole my
No, go
thunder
ahead.
on that. So again, Senate Bill 754 was signed into law over the weekend, and this allows for acclamation in our elections. So we're very excited that that is moving forward. In recent days, you've probably heard of the Edison Public Safety Power Shutoff Program. And this is a practice whereby Edison may proactively cut off electricity in high fire risk areas due to potentially dangerous weather conditions such as low humidity, strong winds, and hot temperatures mixed with dry fuels. While the village is not currently on the Edison watch list, VMS staff actively monitors the list in times of changing conditions. If a shutoff were to occur, staff would use the Code Red emergency notification system to alert our residents and consider activating clubhouses 1, 3, and 5 to host residents during prolonged outages. So just wanted you to be aware that VMS staff is actively monitoring this situation during our fire season. Residents can visit sce.com/safety/wildfire/PSPS for additional information. Coming up in 2020 is the census update, and we wanted to provide our residents with some milestones that they should be aware of. On April 1st, every home will receive an invitation to participate in the 2020 census. Residents will be able to respond to the census online, or households can respond by mail, telephone, or through the traditional in-person interview. In May 2020, census takers will begin visiting those homes that have not yet responded to the census. You may have already noticed census takers in the neighborhoods, and this is a normal part of the preparations for the 2020 census. If someone visits your home to collect information, you can do the following to verify their identity. Ensure that they have a valid identification badge with photograph and U.S. Department of Commerce watermark and expiration date. We'll be providing additional information as we move closer to the 2020 census. This morning, I would also like to provide an update on our efforts to improve our tree trimming services. This is part of the VMS enhancement project to improve efficiencies in our various services. On January 1st, 2020, we intend to move some tree trimming personnel to our grounds maintenance division. This will free up budgeted tree trimming funds for all three corporations and allow the opportunity to use outside services. We've issued a RFP, a request for proposals for tree trimming services. Those proposals are due back at the end of the month. And we expect to implement contract tree trimming services in January 2020, if all goes according to plan. On Tuesday, October 29th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom, there will be a special Mobilities and Vehicle Committee meeting. This will be a chance for VMS staff to introduce its implementation plan for enhancements to the transportation system. On October 2nd, the consultants presented their final recommendations on our transportation system to the Mobility and Vehicles Committee. So staff since that time has been working to come up with an implementation plan which focuses on those recommendations and yet stays within the 2020 approved budget. So again, that meeting will be on Tuesday, October 29th at 1:30 here in the boardroom. And just a reminder that Thursday, October 17th at 10:17 a.m. will be the Great Shakeout. This is an opportunity for our residents to practice how to be safe during a large seismic event. Residents are encouraged to drop, cover, and hold for 1 minute and to review the Shakeout website for additional earthquake safety tips. At the same time, our Good Neighbor building and block captains will be checking on their neighbors and turning in simulated earthquake damage and injury reports. These forms will be forwarded to VMS staff, who will be conducting a tabletop exercise at the same time using the Village Emergency Operations Plan. So it's a great opportunity for everyone to rehearse being ready for a seismic event. And residents interested in joining the Disaster Preparedness Task Force are encouraged to email the Department of Security Services at the email address is chief@vmsinc.org. And that concludes my presentation this morning.
Okay, some residents have come forward and asked about the plan and the notifications as VMS is doing concrete work and paving. Some of them were not, felt that they weren't notified in time. Could you go through that process?
Sure. The maintenance and construction departments follows a pretty detailed plan on when to notify residents of upcoming work. We have been focused on better coordinating different services. So if there's a concrete and paving project as well as a painting project, we are working very diligently to better coordinate those efforts. So that is an ongoing effort and something we are working on.
Okay. Any questions for the COO?
The census staff, I'm pretty sure they're required to wear badges. Are we giving them a vest or something to identify them, or what's their plan?
Yes, sir. They will also be wearing yellow vests. They'll have the photo ID and the watermark from the U.S. government.
Any other comments from the board? Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Going on to item 10, consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent calendar as amended?
I'd like the motion to accept the calendar.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Any other comments, questions on this? Okay, all in favor? Are we voting electronically here? Okay. Okay, 9 yes, 0 no, motion passes. Okay, on to unfinished business. At this time, I'll turn it over to Lynn Jarrett, who's our secretary.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
I would like to entertain a motion to postpone the resolution for the membership in good standing until November.
I'll make the motion.
I second.
Okay, and can you explain a little bit, just a brief over the top?
I'm going to let Bunny do that.
Okay?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was thinking about something, so.
Okay, would you want to tell us why you want to propose to postpone the resolution
Oh, okay.
until November?
That's item 11A.
No, 11.
11A, okay. Well, apparently there's been some new information based upon the state, right? And some of their regulations that have just been passed right now.
Okay.
And so our legal counsel will be advising us.
Were your mic on?
Our legal counsel will be advising us in closed meeting as to what we can actually do in regards to a portion of that particular.
Good, Siobhan?
Senate Bill 323 was signed by the governor also this weekend, and that impacts this item.
Okay, all right.
More information to follow.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, all in favor of postponing it to November? Okay. You want to do
Always
a
raise my hand.
hand vote, Cheryl? Okay, yeah, item 11A. Have one vote missing. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, she stepped out. Okay. 8-4, 0 no. Okay, we will postpone till November. Okay, item 11B.
Okay, entertain a motion to adopt a resolution to revise the non-emergency maintenance chargeable services to include carport condensation panel repairs as a chargeable service, and this has met the 28-day notification for member comments.
Okay,
Need a motion?
is there a motion?
I make a motion to adopt the resolution.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? You get to vote again.
There goes my hand, I'm so traditional.
Yeah. Okay, and we added 11C to this,
Okay,
which is approved resolution for the third board appointment of officers.
right. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution for third appointment of officers of third board. This is different than what is in your packet, those people who are here that are present. So I will read these, please. Steve Parsons was elected president, Annie McCary, first vice president, Kush Bada, second vice president, Lynn Jarrett, secretary, John Pearlstone, treasurer. Resolved further that the following staff persons are hereby appointed as ex officio officers of this corporation. Jeff Parker, vice president, Siobhan Foster, assistant secretary, and Betty Parker, assistant treasurer.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well, that
to,
was a motion. Can we
Oh,
have
okay.
a second?
Second? Okay. Just for further clarification, some of the duties that we have that we allow for ex officio members are to attend our meetings, to advise us on projects, things like that, and also in certain circumstances to sign documents on our behalf. As you can see in your packet, the agenda packet, there's a list of items that Betty, the CFO, carries out. Our treasurer has met with her, and these are things that the treasurer will be following up with also. But in the interest of time, she has access to go ahead and sign on our behalf. I've asked for Jeff and Siobhan to also come up with a list of items they think that they might need to sign on our behalf, and we will be talking about that, and we have the right to limit what they can sign on our behalf, but we'll be going through that. There are some things that need to be expedited, we know, but we'll be getting a list from them soon as to their roles in this capacity. So, that being so, we'll take a vote. Okay, I believe it's up on our terminals here. Okay, passes 9-0. And we'll move on to item 12, new business, which we have none that I know of. Anybody have any new business we haven't talked about? Okay, item 13, committee reports. We'll start with Director Pearlstone.
Man, moving too quick for me today. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start the financial update with a couple of general comments that I think will be more valuable even than the numbers, and that is going to encourage anyone interested in knowing where we stand on our finances to attend our next Finance Committee meeting on November 5th. That's at 1:30 in the boardroom. We do a quarterly forecast review, and all the department heads are being communicated with currently to provide updates on how things look so far this year, how they look for the rest of the year. And so, as you'll see when we go through the detailed numbers, to kind of get a gauge on how this last quarter works, where a lot of work is being done, a lot of money is being spent, will be really useful and valuable. So definitely make a note to attend that if you want to see where we are and where we think we're going. With that said, I will turn to the package that's in your, the pages that are in the package under item, what are we on here? 13A. And if we go to the first slide, we'll kind of see how we're looking. And I've mentioned in prior months that our budget is split up equally over 12 months, but the work is performed differently, with the most of it being in the last quarter of the year. So the good news is everything is right according to plan. Currently, let's take a look at some of the numbers. You'll see how things are shaping up. The first is kind of a global picture. The assessment revenue was $21,484,000. We had non-assessment revenue of $1.8 million. Add those together for total revenue of $23,301,000. Against expenses of $20,248,000, and the net revenue to the positive is $3 million. And that, again, I want to make the point, our numbers, because of the timing of our meetings, that's through the end of August. So September's already in the books. October is, a lot of things going on. So we have some excess revenue because of the way the budget's set up, but I really want to be clear that some of this stuff will be very important as we go through the fourth quarter. We're watching it closely. Moving on to slide 2, you can see a breakdown from operations as opposed to the global, which has operations and reserve dollars. This shows how things work with day-to-day expenses and revenues. And we had assessment revenue of $12,511,000, non-assessment revenue of just over $1 million. Total revenues, those two numbers added together. Expenses were a little bit less. So we had $13,595,000 to give you the exact numbers. Total expenses of $13,285,000, so operating surplus of $310,000 as of August 31st. And there are some things noted at the bottom that are excluded from that number, one of which is a positive for Third Mutual. We've had a nice gain, not realized, it could change tomorrow, but the way the market's been, our money that's in reserve that's invested very safely has had an unrealized gain due to market conditions, so that is part of our asset base as well. If we go on to the next slide, number 3, we can see kind of a summary, which I think is the one that probably means the most to residents, of how we're doing versus budget. You know, we do our projections as best we can. Are we managing things well? And you can take a look. Assessment revenue is right on target. Non-assessment revenue, we've seen additional non-assessment revenue, mostly due to 2 items. Chargeable services has been very well received by the community, and that generates additional revenue. And then, as I mentioned, the unrealized gain on our investments. So that helps our asset base, and that is to the positive $705,000 so far this year. You add those first 2 numbers together, and you can see the total revenue. I won't read those, but you can look at the slide and take a look at them. The total expenses are the expenses to date in total through this August 31st, $20,248,000 actual versus $23 million projected. And that leaves us with the same net revenue I mentioned in slide 1, that global picture of $3 million of net revenue above budget. So things are favorable to the expense. And overall, our projection, the way our budget's set up, had an actual deficit. So we're doing even better than we had thought we would do by $3.5 million. So that gives you a picture of where we are actual versus budget. It's not going to stay that way through the rest of the year. If you're tuning in month to month and want to see how we're doing, we know it's important to our residents. That's why I think the next finance meeting is so important, to really get the picture of what's coming. We did meet with the department heads literally this morning, and all projects are on target. Everything looks like it's going to be done successfully through year end, and the dollar figures are looking favorable. But why not get the hard numbers in November and see for yourself? All right, moving on to the next slide, you can see the breakdown of where our budget surplus is coming from right now. Most of it is in jobs that are currently kicking in and are already being performed. Most notably, we've got a lot of maintenance and construction. We started slope work from the landscape side of things. I know we're about to kick in with aeration on a lot of the lawns. So major projects going. Turf replacement is just starting at Gate 14. So these dollars are applied, and they will be, a good chunk of them will be spent, but we're watching them carefully. And again, you can feel comfortable, things look favorable. Non-assessment revenue, I talked about that. That's chargeable services and the unrealized gain. We're to the favorable on that. And you can look down the rest of the list. Those numbers don't amount to as high a percentage. The only thing we're over this year on is legal fees, and that's due to some specific situations that we feel are being handled well, and hopefully we'll have those under control moving into 2020 as well. Moving on to slide 5, the financial report, you see it as a pie chart, so you can get kind of a feel for where dollars are coming from and where they're going, which will be the next slide. So focusing on total non-assessment revenue, for the third time, interest income, which is that part of our unrealized gain and what interest we earn on our investments, plus fees and charges to residents, chargeable services primarily, are the bulk of our non-assessment income. There are some others. Scan down the list, you can see, I think there are things you'd expect, laundry expenses and lease processing fees, things of that nature. Give you a second to look that over. And then we move on to slide 6. And you will see another number we talked about at length, which is the total expenses that Third Mutual has incurred. And you can see the bulk of those, as has been the case throughout the year, and we expect it to continue, have been our outside service contracts and our employee compensation and related expenses to make sure we're getting the various services we need performed throughout the year. There are others on that list that come up to far less, but they're important, and we're watching them as well. Utilities and telephone, things like water, electricity, et cetera. So you can look down that list and see our expenses. So the final 2 slides, I'll gloss over slide 7 because it's in a picture in slide 8. It makes it a lot easier to really see where we're at. This just shows you a breakdown of where our reserves were, our non-operating fund balances, and how things occurred during the month and where they ended. So you can see we started, beginning balance at the beginning of the year was $29 million, the far right column, $29,260,000. We've had contributions and interest of $9.4 million, expenditures of $6.8 million. So we've increased this balance to $31.8 million as of August 31st. And I'll have you jump to the next slide. And you can see just how positive we think things are progressing year over year. We're seeing the balances grow while we're taking care of major needs for the community, the dry rot, all the landscaping needs, et cetera, and we're making sure we have the funds to take care of things moving forward for the future. So you can take a look at that and see how they break down, but our funds are the highest they've been in 5 years. Finally, my real estate update for those who like to follow such things. We had a pretty flat month during August for resales, and you can see the chart. There's been some ups and downs this year. There was concern housing sales were falling, and like I like to do, I take a look because we do get the information on the more recent month after this report's produced. And the good news is there was a significant increase in sales in September for the entire, both Third and United. So that's good news. Hopefully the market is picking up. But I think the takeaway, as I've shared before, is we've got a good, stable resales situation going on. Means we must be performing well. People are wanting to buy into the community and prices are holding up. So we're excited about that and we hope that continues. And again, I'll finish where I started, which is November 5th. A lot of updates that'll be worth hearing if you want to show up. And if not, we'll have them available to report in our next board update. And that's my report.
Thanks, John. One thing I'll add to that is our leasing rate now stands at a solid 28% and is slightly increasing. We're keeping an eye on this and working with our legal counsel on this as well, because in our governing documents, it says we cannot exceed 30%. So just as an item for you to put in the back of your mind, you know where we stand on that. Okay, thank you again, John, for that. And I'll go ahead and report on the Architecture Control Standards Committee. We didn't have a meeting last month. There wasn't enough information and things we need to deal with. We're covering those in the meeting this month, and that'll be on October 28th at 9:30 a.m. here in the boardroom. So if you'd like to attend, that would be great. Okay, Report of Communications Committee, Director McCray.
Okay, the Third Communications Committee did meet on October 9th. We identified several key issues to be working on for the upcoming year, one of which is a campaign to educate our residents about proper disposal of trash. And another one is streamlining a letter, water usage letter, that's going to be going out to the residents, buildings that have high water usage. The committee is working on streamlining a letter of communication to those residents. Our next committee meeting will be January 8th.
Thank you. And on to Director Bada for Maintenance Construction Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This period, we did not have a Maintenance and Construction Committee meeting. Our next meeting will be November 4th, 2019.
Okay, thank you. And report on the Parking and Golf Cart Task Force. I'm the chair of that, and we are really waiting to see how it looks with our new 8 golf cart additional parking spots up in the wedding cake area between gates 5 and 6. Based on that, we're going to pursue more things starting in January to look at in research. So that's the report on that. Okay, landscape report, Director Jarrett.
Okay. The landscape meeting was held late this month, so that's why it is not in the board packet, the report. The meeting was well attended with more than 20 people coming out to speak on their issues, primarily on maintenance. Staff will do the best they can to respond to those complaints. One of the problems they have is that crews will go out 4 times a year and work the neighborhoods, but maintaining the grass and shrubs in between those times has gotten behind. Right now, the staff is switching from the mow cycle where they spend 3 days a week just mowing, ultimately reducing the frequency to bi-weekly for the season. They now have begun the pruning cycle and will prune or weed, which means things will look a bit overgrown for a while, but the work will get done. This means that many of the issues residents brought to the meeting will soon be non-existent. Work on the landscape modernization project in Gate 14 is in process, and it is planned to be completed by mid-November. Of course, after the plants are in, it will take time for them to grow a bit, but we're going to end up with a beautiful little park-like area. Contractors are coming in to begin aerating this month, and I have to tell you, the lawns are and will be taken down to the ground. But once this process is completed, in a few months' time, this lawns should be beautiful. Just remember, the grass is going to get ugly before it gets beautiful. So keep that in mind as you drive by. The slope work is coming along. Outside contractors are working on the large slopes, and the staff is working on the smaller slopes. The contracting work is supposed to be completed by the end of the year. The staff initiated ticket crew in June, and 2,000 tickets have been responded to with reduced response time. And think about that. That's a lot of tickets that they completed. The board realizes that landscaping staff has been cut over the years. Staff is having difficulty in filling the 11 open positions they have now, especially with the tight labor force. The entire landscaping industry is having a tough time finding workers. Ways are being looked at now to get some of the work done with possibly more contracting. It's been suggesting that we contract out all of our landscaping. That's been suggested by some of the members in the community. But that's not possible with the labor contract we have in place. So just keep that in mind. The cost constraints on landscaping over the years has taken its toll. We as a board are looking at the facts, studies are being done, and we are working towards a brighter future for our landscape.
Thank you. Okay, on to the Water Subcommittee, Director Karimi.
Thank you. The Water Subcommittee met yesterday, October 14. Now we have a new advisor working with the Water Subcommittee, Ms. Kay Haynes. She sits on the El Toro Water Board. She comes with a lot of experience in the area of water and landscaping, and we are very happy to have her, and she's going to help us to some of the communication between us and the El Toro Water, make that much easier to get information back and forth. Some of the items we picked up, we talked about the El Toro Water rebate. There are two types of rebates that we discussed before. One is for equipment, the low-flow toilets, and the high-efficiency clothes washer. We gave those information to M&C committee to discuss if the VMS want to get involved with this plan and provide chargeable services with these units. But between now and then that the M&C committee will decide how the VMS is going to do this, if people want to change their toilet or they get new washer, please contact El Toro Water directly or go online. There is a $100 rebate for the toilet and $200 rebate for the washer. On the recycled water rebate, we're getting a lot of those rebates on the recycled water. The areas that we turn over to the drought-resistant plan, we get some rebates. In the area also that we're using potable water and the recycled water is not available, we're getting some rebate right now and some discount. And but the plan is to get those areas, which is mainly Gate 11, get the recycled water into those areas too. We discussed the letter as Director McCurry talked about for the high usage of water. We formalizing that letter. The process is that every month the meter is going to be read by the El Toro Water. We're going to get a bill. We're going to go through the bill and look at the water usage by the cluster of homes because we don't have meter in every unit. We have meter for clusters. So we identify those clusters that go from tier 1, tier 2 above to tier 3 and tier 4 because the cost of the water exponentially goes higher when you pass tier 2 and go to tier 3 and tier 4. So this is going to be a friendly letter, a communication letter to let you know that your cluster is one of those areas the water usage is high. Please look at it positively. Read it that way, check things out around your house, make sure nothing is leaking. We also talk to El Toro Water, see if they can provide us with blue tablets that you can put in your toilet sink and then see if there is a leak and continuous leak in your sink. But when you get that letter, please, it's not punitive. It's helping to reduce the cost of water. We're spending about over $140,000 a month on water. That's a huge amount of money that we're spending. And anything that we can save will help everybody. On the recycled water, I guess gate 9 is the one that is going to be ongoing for getting recycle in there, and gate 11 is on the future recycled water. Our next meeting is January 2020. Any comments or support for the water committee is appreciated by any of the members. Please come forward and help us to conserve. Thank you.
Good. Some recent information we had, and I just want to reiterate what he's talking about. Our water bill is budgeted at $2.7 million a year. Approximately 5% of that, we pay overages for fines in Tier 3, Tier 4 water. That amounts to $135,000 approximately. So as you can see, like Director Community said, we need to watch how we use our water, don't overwater, things like this. So just a word to put out there, it's costing us whenever somebody overuses water. Okay, on to the Resident Policy and Compliance Task Force, Director Jarrett.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had our first meeting since I've been in charge, so to speak. We had our first meeting yesterday as myself as chair, and we have some items coming up, and one of the things that we're going to be looking into is, well, we're going to take the item we postponed today for the good standing policy. We're taking that up. We're taking up the co-leasing, co-occupant policy, and we're also looking into the no smoking policy, and we'd like to get a 3-story building going on. So this is in the, infancy stages for the no smoking building policy. And I'm sure other things are going to come along. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, report of Village Energy Task Force, Director Frankel.
We had a interesting presentation by some fellow who was proposing a Laguna Woods amphitheater, and it would be outside behind this building. And construction of such obviously being very expensive. And it was why he presented as the Energy Committee, I'm not certain, but it needs to go to the Community Activities Committee. And the chances of it passing, I have significant doubts. We discussed the electric vehicle inventory. It's kind of, and their locations, and that's kind of weak, and they'll be working on that. There was a street light outage report given. The Melrock engineer, who's going to be looking at the energy, particularly in this building, that motion was passed. And also for this building, the disaster capabilities of this building was discussed, and it needs a detailed assessment. And that's the extent of my report for this committee.
Okay, dealing with the Melrock contract, which is very, very little. It's less than $10,000.
I'll be talking about that more in detail.
On the GRF?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All righty, so we'll talk about that more there. Okay, GRF committee highlights. Director Bada on the CAC, Community Activities Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. But again, we did not have a meeting after our board meeting. This one was before our last board meeting. So our next CAC meeting will be November 14th.
Okay. On to Director Pearlstone, Finance Committee and Investment Task Force.
Okay, thank you. The Finance Committee did not meet between our last meeting, but does meet this month, October 23rd, 1:30 PM in the boardroom. And if it's okay, I'll jump right into the subcommittees. There were some updates for the Investment Task Force, which I also serve on. That is actively moving forward with the transfer of our funds to a new caretaker administrator, Sageview, which the board has been, we've had public meetings, the board's been made aware of it. But to really make sure everybody was heard, we had yet another public meeting with Sageview in attendance, walking through the process, talking about where we might go from here. And all of the committee members agreed that it's going well. We're looking forward to getting that settled in, and then we'll be putting forth some proposals for possible shifts in portfolio to a more diversified fixed interest, no equity, no stocks at this time, but a more fixed interest portfolio that might give us a higher yield without taking additional risk. So that is not happening yet, but that's what's coming down the pike for us to review, and we'll keep you posted. I will also add that we don't have it on our list, we should add it each month, but the Shared Costs Committee, which I know everybody's interested in, GRF has shared cost, and a revenue generating committee is actively working on ideas. We did meet, and things are moving forward very well. There's a lot of discussion about trying to get a model that will present a more equal, balanced way to share cost. And also, as part of that, reviewing comprehensively the cable and internet package and related services to see if there's ways to offer more services for the same money, reduce cost, any options that may make sense at this time with all the massive changes going on with cable, internet, streaming, et cetera. So that review's in process, and we'll have updates for you on that as it progresses. It's quite involved, but it is being moved forward, so that's good news. And I don't have dates for the next meetings on those two, but they'll be posted, and we certainly welcome public interaction and feedback on any of that.
Thank you. Director Jarrett, Landscape Committee.
The next meeting for landscape meeting will be, November the 13th. These meetings are only held quarterly now. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't have my mic on. The landscape meetings are going to be held quarterly for the GRF, and the next meeting will be, what did I say? Oh, November the 13th. Thank you.
Okay, Director Bada, Maintenance Construction Committee.
I will defer this to Director Franco to report because I was not present on that. It was before I was.
So Bunny and I sat on that committee. This will be our last meeting as members of that committee. And the Mel Rock consultant was approved, and he's going to install a device, an EMS measuring device in this building with a cost of about $3,000 to $4,000, relatively inexpensive. As far as the readouts, it's too soon to tell because that information has to be compared with readouts from our existing system and to see where that's going to go. And that's the conclusion of my report.
Okay, can I add to that?
Yeah. Bunny may have something additional.
Yes. Okay, the M&C committee did recommend to the GRF board the installation of gates for the security gates in Gate 11.
Oh, okay.
And they also talked about the EV stations. And currently, the EV stations do not accommodate Teslas. And so if anybody comes with a Tesla and uses our EV station, they have to bring their own adapter. It was a discussion. This adapter actually costs $500, so for them to use that. So that was another discussion. And then also enclosed, they approved a new gate, at the RV lot. That's,
The repair of?
right,
Oh,
right.
okay. Because they've been talking about that, and I thought they made some good progress over the last month.
Well, in the close, we talked about and we approved the contract.
Okay.
But then that has to go forward to the GRF board for approval.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
In that regard, there are two gates to the maintenance yard. We don't have gate arms there, and there's no plan to put them in up there. But the gate over by the equestrian exists, and this is over by the TV6 building, and that's where the new gate is going.
Okay. PAC Renovation Ad Hoc Committee, Director Pearlstone.
That committee did not meet since our last board meeting, but does meet later this week. So you can attend that, and I'm trying to find where the date is. Is it on there?
October 17th.
The 17th, I apologize. Yeah, so October 17th at 1:30 in the boardroom.
Okay. Director McCary, Media and Communications.
That committee meeting is scheduled for October 21st at 1:30 p.m.
Okay. Mobility and Vehicles Committee, Director Frankel.
The consultant made Fair and Peers is the name of the consultant, and they made a detailed presentation. But more importantly, as our chief executive, our chief operating officer mentioned, is on the 29th of this month, is where a presentation is going to be made again in great detail, talking about the 5-step plan. And everyone is encouraged, all residents are encouraged to participate and listen to that presentation.
Okay, thank you. The Security Community Access Committee met on August 26th. The next meeting will be October 28th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. And the last is report of Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings, Director Frankel.
There were 19 violations, 4 parking, 1 contractor parking. By the way, that's dropped significantly because the information is out now that contractors really only have 30 minutes to park in the cul-de-sacs, and then they have to park out on the street. 3 speeding, 8 stop signs, 3 in the RV storage. All were, there was 1 not guilty, guilty with no fine, and all the rest were found, all the violations were found guilty.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody have any items for future agendas?
Excuse me, I
Yes.
would like to request to speak.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
May I please add to the agenda, I didn't think about it till now, but I'd like to give a report on the Recreation Subcommittee meeting that was held
Go
yesterday.
ahead, yes.
Yes, I'd like to see that committee gets a report or gets put under M&C for the subcommittee report in the future. We only have the meetings once 3 times a year. 3 times a year we have the meetings. The reason I want to really report on this today is because yesterday we had our meeting and Vilni Soren brought forth, she works in maintenance, of course, and she brought forth this wonderful report that we really enjoyed getting. And it was over a 30-year period of time, and it was on components. So it broke out all the revenue and the expenses for the next 30 years, and it had every item on there, every item in the rec room. But what I want to say is because these rec rooms, there's 53 rec rooms in our 3-story buildings, and they've been brought up the standards over the last few years, and the rec rooms subcommittee meetings have gotten shorter because there's so fewer complaints. The work in those rooms have really been, maintenance is unbelievable. So I just want to report that because those people have done a good job. Vilni and Melanie Soren and Mo Bachter, who works for her. And also Melanie reports to Ernesto. So this morning I sent Ernesto a big message, of big thanks for those people's work. I mean, they really need to be recognized because this is the first time we've ever had a meeting that we didn't have complaints to bring to that group. And she did a wonderful job on the report, the component report. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
You skipped disaster and security and community access.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Disaster.
The way the disaster preparedness system works is that we have coordinators spread throughout the community at each of the clubhouses, and their job is to collect the information from the cul-de-sac good neighbor captains and the other good neighbor captains. So I'm going to be I've been appointed to be the Clubhouse 6 coordinator to replace Steve Parsons, who has other assignments.
Thank you. Okay. Does that complete your report?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to future agenda items. Anybody need to add one? We did add the Garden Villa Rec Room Subcommittee. Meets 3 times a year.
4, so it's quarterly.
It's quarterly?
No, we put it to 3.
Oh, she said it's quarterly.
Okay, we'll figure that out then. Okay, we'll start around here, and I'll start with Director of Committee on Director comments.
No comment, Mr.
Okay, John?
No, thank you.
John?
Great job on your first meeting.
No comment, thank you.
Okay.
Just a reminder to all of our residents, with the time changing, just be more aware that it is getting dark earlier, and to please drive a little bit slower and watch out for your fellow residents as we're walking. Thank you.
And that changeover in time is the first week in November. Okay, Director Jarrett.
I just want to concur with what John Pearlstone just said. With good first meeting, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bunny. Okay, Craig.
Regarding landscaping and...
Microphone, if you can pull it in. Yeah.
Sure. Is that better?
Yeah, and aim to you.
We got the button down.
Okay, pull it in.
You want me to aim it?
There you go. Okay.
Okay. Have I got it down now, guys?
Yep.
I've had help from 5 of you out of this. I ought to get it right by now.
It just takes practice.
Thank you, one and all. On landscaping, I just wanted to add that the park that's going in at Gate 14, if people would like to see the plants that are going in there, the plants are already sitting next to the park area. So people can go over and view all of the plants that will be going in there.
Thank you, good to know.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
Sit.
Okay. Siobhan.
No, thank you.
Cheryl, John, anything? One last comment I would make is we are really putting a lot of emphasis starting this year on the importance of committees. We have expectations that are going to come out of committees to include such things as what are your expectations for a project? What are specifics about the projects? Does it need an ROI? Anything like this that we can bring forward for our treasurer to be able to look at, to assign a price tag to it and see when it can fit, you know, either this year or next year or out years. So we're changing the structure a little bit on how information is gone. So the importance is really in the committees. So if anybody wants to know what's happening, each committee has, I think all of them have open sessions that you're welcome to come in and be a part of, give your suggestions, your comments, and let us know on that. Another thing is the co-occupancy policy, the patio and balcony covers policy, and the alteration for heat sources have all been postponed to November because we're getting new information in on all of them, which means we had to rewrite some of these things, and some of the research is not totally complete yet. So you'll be seeing all of these in November. So watch for that. If you have any comments that you want taken into consideration, please send in to our corporate secretary, I believe is our source for that. Cheryl, can you raise your hand? Okay. And she'll be sure to get it to us and work with us on that. Okay, at this time, we'll recess our meeting to the closed session, which will be upstairs in the Willow Room.